I wanted to hit Trump and nukes because I'm fascinated by this. Trump seems intimidated. And this gets into this kind of whole question about NATO in general. Donald Trump effectively, so Putin releases 2 doomsday weapons. I'm going to call them doomsday weapons. Those things are terrifying.
Sound like it.
Yeah. So one is, both are nuclear motors.
Yeah.
So let me get the name right. I always get the name wrong. The Berezovnik.
Yeah.
That can apparently fly around the globe forever, hit any target that's on the globe, anywhere around the world. The other one creates nuclear tsunamis that will destroy cities that are on the coast.
It can if it's carrying a nuclear payload. Yeah, which they have exactly. So
So Trump sees both of these, freaks out, panics, and comes out and says something to the effect of, well, we are going to start nuclear testing. Now, part of me thinks that part of this has to do with this idea of the United States and NATO. And what I mean by that is the United States and NATO goes with this idea that we've spent 60 years dumping all sorts of money into being able to corral the Soviet Union. Soviet Union falls apart, NATO remains, brain dead in the way that Macron talked about it. And it's decided that now Russia is what they're going to go after. And they, for all intents and purposes, lose a war in Ukraine against the beating heart of the Soviet Union, not even the entirety of the Soviet Union. Russia comes out with weapon systems that are easily unparalleled in regards to the United States arsenal, and for that matter, for NATO's arsenal.
Yeah.
And it feels like Trump, being the figurehead of NATO, has to show, hey, we still have power. We're still in control. We could still, we still have muscles. Look at us.
He does.
And so I'm going to fire off nukes.
Yeah.
Give me your take on that. Am I getting this right?
Yeah. He's very reactive in the sense. And also, you think about when Trump formulated his sense of what America is. It's in the 70s and 80s. He's an adult. He's already a billionaire. He's thinking about the trajectory of the American economy, the American power. And he's an American, and he's like we should be on top, right? Because he's very competitive. And so his sense of things is we have to be the most of everything. And actually that's his personality, right? I mean, look at the buildings that he makes. Everything he does, it's like, this is the best thing that's ever been made. He says that. Now, it's not necessarily true, but you can see where his mind is. He wants to impress. He wants to impress the world. And the world has changed since Trump had his formative years. It's changed quite a bit. And Trump can't imagine. He looks at BRICS, which is, not super powerful, but it is an interesting non-U.S. alliance, right? And immediately sees, they're trying to go off the dollar. Well, that can't happen. What do you mean it can't happen? Our dollar is collapsing. The whole world's going to be off the dollar in 50 years, and this will be an exclamation point in history. But in his mind, that can't happen. And somehow he thinks, as president, that he can stop it. Well, there are ways that he could stop the world from abandoning the dollar, and that would be to somehow deal with this massive debt that we can't pay. That would be not spending all of this money to control the world and start taking care of our own business so that we are an attractive place to do business. Not tariffing the world, but producing and taking care of our own business. This is actually what most of his counterparts, Putin and Xi, are both talking about all the time. They want to make Russia good for Russia. They want to make China good for Chinese, right? They're not talking about, we want to make China great so we can take over the United States. That's not what any of those guys are saying, but that is how Trump views it. So his worldview is a handicap. It's a big handicap for him as president. And he's surrounded by basically, except for possibly Tulsi Gabbard, who has been largely quieted, right? I mean, they got her in a box. The rest of them are airheads. I mean, they're not people that know history. They're not people that care about history. There are people that see Trump as their ticket to relevance. I mean, if you think about some of these people, the two, Barbie and Ken, Pam Bondi and Pete Hegseth, that I call them Ken and Barbie. They would not, they are not of the caliber people that you would expect a great nation to elevate to the levels
Right.
that they are. And it's not anything wrong with them, but they're just not very intellectually or in any other way competitive. Oh, well, they are very, 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 very ridiculously good looking. I guess you could say that, right? To quote from
Uh-huh.
that what is it? The show that we had, the comedy movie. But yeah, I mean, so he's not well equipped to make the statements. He's not well equipped to be educated on more realities of the globe. And really even the realities, he thinks America needs to be made stronger. He's right about that. Economically stronger, socially stronger. There's many things you can do to improve America, right? You go through our cities. I mean, so many people who travel the world, they're seeing most of America as decrepit in many ways, behind, archaic in many ways. And that has its own charm, right? I mean, you go visit places like that are archaic and you see how people used to live. That could be an attractive, tourism thing. I'm just saying. But our country needs help and work, and we have a decent economy. A lot of that resource ought to be kept here, whether it's kept here in private hands of actual, Americans, the 80% that are at the bottom or the 95% that are at the bottom. They're not keeping hardly any of their money. They're not able to invest anything. Those people are in massive debt to the banks and they can't get ahead. But those people need to have more resources. They make the resources. Why can't they have them? And then our country itself has, even though we're a very large country, we can't have the same infrastructure as a small country because we have such a large geography. But there's huge infrastructure problems. We could have a better energy grid. I mean, what's wrong with that? We don't have, our energy grid sucks. I mean, it works most of the time. That's a huge project. And Trump kind of ran on doing things like this. But then as soon as he's up there, and this goes for the first term too, which was a harder term for him because he didn't have trusted people and everybody hated him so badly. But they hate him badly this time too. A lot of folks are on his case, always they can't see anything positive about him. But his campaign platform was to make America stronger for Americans. And that's not a military project. That actually will require resources from our military projects to be kept at home and used wisely in ways that will help us go into the next 50 years.
Yes.
So his ideas aren't bad, but he has, who can advise him of that? Ken and Barbie are going to tell him how to fix America, because they're not. And his views, his worldview, and his way of dealing with things was very much solidified in the 80s when it was at the peak of his success in real estate. In building great casinos and buildings and hotels and golf courses. And so he has that, but that's not enough of a foundation to do what he's trying to do. And so I think he's in many ways out of his league. Now, luckily, I think the foreign countries, particularly the ones that are big, like I say China and Russia, the military counterparts, and other countries too, they see this, they recognize this. And if you notice how Putin and really Xi, they don't react very strongly to a lot of this stuff as he goes from 180 degrees in the course of a couple of minutes. They don't react to that. They kind of just sit tight and just we can cope with this while they continue to strengthen their own countries. Meanwhile, we're just all talk and no action. And I think this is what we're his talk of nuclear testing. It is true that our nuclear arsenal is very large and it's very old and it's very mismanaged. And I don't know, you probably didn't watch this, but as a former military person, I would tend to see news articles more than maybe everybody else. But we had major news media about corruption in our Air Force commands that oversee our nuclear silos, our nuclear systems, our technology. Where you have to fire like a general and 2-3 colonels and all these other people because what are they doing? Well, they're all sleeping with everybody's wives, or they're all corrupt. They're all doing stuff that is not their job. Their job is to, maintain and ensure that our arsenal is safe and not deteriorating and not leaking. All the things. And they're not doing that because that's a backwater. Nuclear weapons is a backwater in the military. It's not glorious. That's not where we send our smartest guys and gals. We don't send them into the nuclear silos. That is not a place you want to be. And it's not a place that's going to get you promoted to 4-star or 3-star, even 2-star general. You come up through the nuclear forces of a military. You're not going to be running things. It's a backwater. So that's
why is it a backwater? Wait,
boring, because they're never used.
Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
You want to be a fighter pilot. You want to be in special forces where you can go conduct military coups and fight these little battles and really kind of wave the flag. Our nuclear weapon is a deterrent. It's a deterrent force. That's what's the concept behind it. And it doesn't get used. Now, what we do have, and I'll tell you, I don't know if you saw the interview. Tucker Carlson has one just up in the past several days. Interview with a nuclear scientist, academic, not a military one, but an academic scientist that studies it. And it's quite a long interview. But she talks a little bit about the history of nuclear accidents and close calls. We've had plenty of those in this country and around the world, right? And so one of the things that I've seen interpreting Trump's idea we're going to test nuclear weapons. Of course, he backed away from blowing them up, above ground tests, which have been banned forever. Well, not forever, but for quite a long time. Yeah. He says, oh, we're just going to test them out. We're going to make sure everything works, that kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm sure he got that idea because this is a message that the Pentagon has been sending him and his, what is it? Not the Hudson Institute, the other one, the other conservative, the one that had the Project 2025.
Oh, them. Okay.
Yeah, they have in their military updating section of this massive tome that they wrote and Trump says, oh, I didn't have anything to do with that. Well, he is being fed that information because
yes, he is.
It's a lot of information and some of it is useful because his own staff can't produce that. They probably don't even understand what the words mean. But in the military section, they're in the nuclear section, they talk about upgrading the existing nuclear capability. And part of that is because it is decrepit. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's been sitting there and nobody knows, are we going to have more accidents? Because think about the accidents in the nuclear arena that we've had. 3 Mile Island, some of the ones in Europe, Chernobyl, they're all maintenance problems, right? These accidents aren't really, we accidentally, did it on purpose. No, it was accidents. Accidents that were because of poor training, incompetent personnel, bad maintenance, delayed maintenance, all these kinds of things that happen in backwater industries where nobody's looking at them. So there's something to be said for looking at our nuclear arsenal. But the bad thing for Trump is that there is no doubt we have been left behind in most of this, and certainly the Russian weapon systems and the whole idea of small nuclear engines that can loiter, that can fuel flights that last 24 hours or indefinitely. We don't have that, and the way our system works in acquiring weapons, we will never have that. We're not gonna. When we get it, it'll be 20 years too old and 30 years too late.
Would be somewhere else at this point.
Sure. Yeah. So, but Trump doesn't have either advisors. He doesn't want advisors that will be out of the box, and he doesn't have the background himself to understand how this works. Now, he does understand lack of maintenance, but in Trump's world, if you have a building that has lack of maintenance, you just you tear it down, you implode the building. As you would an old building, and you build something from scratch. Well, as a American government, we have no capability to build anything from scratch. Everything is resting on what we have already. It's a big problem. And we have no money to do it. I mean, the military budget, over $1 trillion, that's matched by the debt payment. That's matched by the interest on the debt. We're not doing anything to the principal of the debt. That's mandatory annual interest. It equals, and that's money that goes to banks because they printed money or they let you borrow. Totally unproductive in many cases. I mean, I think I don't see how nobody likes paying interest, right? Well,
it's like $500 billion or something. It's some insane amount of money.
It will soon be over $1 trillion a year just on interest, and that's also what our military budget is. So we don't have the leeway. We don't have the financial leeway. We don't have the vision. And, you know, there was a couple of visionaries, one in particular, Elon Musk, whether you like him or not, he thinks outside of the box. He is the kind of guy that if you have Elon Musk in a room, he's going to say what he thinks, and he uses his brain. His brain is pretty good, and he thinks about stuff. He comes up with some crazy ideas. Some work, some don't. But he's not afraid to say them. They got rid of him out of the administration. You cannot have somebody that questions things on the basis of logic, creativity, and maybe objectivity. Can't have it. He's gone. He's not talking to him. They are an echo chamber, much as you could say many other administrations have been.
But this one is different. He just surrounded by sycophants.
Well, it's one thing. That's right. And he's getting in everybody's business with this echo chamber. So that's dangerous. I mean, you know, I'm going to fight the Russians, and my advisors are an echo chamber of airheads that really only care about pleasing me. I mean, this is a bunker mentality. You know, this is the end of the Hitler regime. I'm not saying he's Hitler. I don't.
I know what you mean. No, I know what you mean. You're effectively pointing out that the U.S. is declining, and the people that Donald Trump has surrounded himself with in no way is dealing with the fact that it's a decline. They're just telling him what he wants to hear.
I think he has a sense that something's declining, but he hasn't gone into it in enough detail. And really, look, I'm sure being president's really hard, right? I'm sure it's incredibly hard, just like being a CEO of a big company is really hard. But we have a constitution in this country. So all you got to do to be president is say, well, got a lot of problems. Where do we start? Well, are we doing things constitutionally? Right there, you will have an end of wars and interventions abroad. Because
Karen, you know that's not the way it works. Oh, you know that's not the way it works.
I know, but he has I give him he has the capability. Any president can really hold. The Constitution is his guide and his shield, he or her, whoever the president is, if they chose to use it that way. And he isn't doing that. He shows contempt for the Constitution. Not that any other presidents haven't also done the same. They have, but it's frustrating. It's frustrating. And again, he gives money away too. The two big wars that are raging and the ones we're starting, all are sucking funds right out of the taxpayer coffers or out of the banks that we borrow from. He could stop that. He can stop that. You know, anybody that can put 50% tariffs or 150% tariffs on other countries, you can. If you have that kind of chutzpah, how come you can't say to the defense industrial establishment or the foreign policy lobbies, we're cutting Israel off right now? Sorry.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because oftentimes a lot of channels, especially right-wing channels that I actually like, would make the argument, well, it's not Trump, it's Europe. And Donald Trump humiliated one European world leader after the next when he brings him to the country. He passed a tariff regime on Europe that they are accepting that is humiliating.
Yes.
That they are accepting because they want to keep daddy happy and they want to keep Donald Trump engaged in NATO.
Yeah.
And so the argument to me always falls flat when they make the case of saying, well, it's not Trump, it's Europe. Europe is the problem. Europe is the thing that's keeping us into the war. Zelensky is keeping us into the war. I don't think that's the case. In fact, I would make the argument that what is taking place in regards to Ukraine right now, you have 10,500 troops that are surrounded in Kupiansk and surrounded in Pokrovsk. And people are like, we don't understand why they don't just surrender. We don't understand why they don't just give up. And I guess for my take, the RAND documents made the point of saying that the goal was to overextend Russia, not to win. Meaning the goal was never for Ukraine to win the war, regardless of what Zelensky thinks and regardless of what these people think.
Yeah.
The goal was to overextend Russia. And if indeed you refuse to surrender, which is the European point of view, hey, don't surrender, fight to the last dead Ukrainian.
Oh my gosh.
And it seems that that's even the U.S. point of view. Hey, we're going to keep going. Even though Trump says he wants to deal on terms that are favorable to the U.S. Losers don't get to dictate terms.
That's right.
So for all intents and purposes, the war continues. Now, Putin has just went in for mobilization, effectively signed legislation for potential call-up if necessary. Are we looking at part of the reason that they're not surrendering in these locations and they're fighting to the last Ukrainian is because that was ultimately the objective anyway? It's not that Europe is keeping the war going. is that Europe and the United States had a
Yeah.
plan, and
Yeah.
they're fulfilling that plan.
It is clear from what we know of what was going on in under Obama, tail end of Obama administration, 2014. You know, those F the EU quote from
Right.
yeah. So right there, the contempt for European power, European opinions, European leadership, that contempt was very deeply held in the State Department, in the administrations. And again, that was a Democratic administration. See, these things don't change from party to party. This is the deep state foreign policy. The deep state foreign policy has contempt for Europe's leaders, European economies. And again, what's worse is, I think, in addition to just doing the Rand study thing, you know, let's debilitate Russia over a long period of time. We'll do like Afghanistan, except this time it'll be Ukraine, and Russia will suffer internally. Of course, that was a stupid bet and a wrong bet, but that was kind of the approach. But there's another benefit. And this is one that has been articulated by the Trump administration and really by the Biden administration too, but not in words, not just by their actions. And that was, we are going to make sure that the European and NATO countries, the EU, is economically tied, militarily tied, economically dependent, militarily dependent on the United States. We are going to, in the old colonial competition, we are going to control that market. And certainly we see that with what we've done. Now, the tariffs are kind of very abusive, considering what we've already done to the European economies, right? We told them they can't have cheap oil from their next door neighbor, cheap gas. They're not allowed to do that. So they just have to buy it at twice the price from America, because we actually are producing still and exporting natural gas and, you know, LNG and oil. So this project, really, from a Washington point of view, is that we are the ones pulling all the strings, and the entertainment, you know, like the band that plays before the big band, that's probably NATO and the EU and von der Leyen and all these people. But they're playing songs that are very good to prime the audience for the real band, the main attraction, and that's U.S. deep state foreign policy. And it's working because the economies of and the militaries, really, of Europe are totally not oriented to defense anymore. All of it is a push to Russia, a push to NATO, big weapons, the kinds of weapons that aren't defensive but are offensive, so we can throw them at Moscow and St. Petersburg or whatever, and keep Russia struggling. And then economically, they already had big problems demographically, right? I mean, older populations. Their skilled populations, their skilled worker populations is not what it used to be. Their energy costs are high. Their regulatory states are absolutely impossible. So what's happening is nobody wants to do business in Europe. Well, now what's Trump doing? Well, if anybody, he's forcing people to put their companies in the United States. Some of those companies are leaving Germany. They're leaving France. They're leaving Great Britain and other places to come for purposes of a slightly lower operating cost based on tariffs and everything else, based on deals with Trump, to come and do that in this country. Well, we also have a skilled labor problem in our own country. We also have a little bit of a demographic problem as we age in our country. Now, AI is supposed to solve all that. But the bottom line is the U.S. is really exploiting and has a very detailed and comprehensive plan to weaken Europe. And it's done that. And actually, you could see Europe, let's say everything went totally south, war breaks out. Where's the battlefield going to be? Europe. And they're going to be destroyed. But who cares, right? We won't care, because that'll be our sacrificial lamb, just like Europe's sacrificial lamb was Ukraine. And of course, I think we might be onto something, because the way the Europeans talk is, not the Europeans, but their leadership, the pro-Ukrainian war, anti-Russian leadership, the way they talk is very much, we have to stop them in Ukraine or else they're going to come over and take over Europe. And again, there is no evidence or capability. You know, I mean, they could read their own propaganda. Well, Russia has been 4 years now in this war, and they've only taken a fifth of Ukrainian territory. Well,
Right.
that ought to be, if you hate Russia and you have contempt for Russia's capabilities, that should feed into your narrative. You know, they can't
But it
even
does
take
not.
a fifth of the
Yeah.
Donbass. I mean, a fifth of Ukraine. You know, and it's very slow, and it's cost them all these. I don't think the numbers and the dead bodies are correct on the Russian side. But anyway, let's say you use the European numbers. It's cost them 1 million men and lots of money. And yet they've only taken, well, you can't have both those stories. Either Russia is very limited in its ability to come west and take property and run whole states, and absorb them into the Russian Federation. Either they can do that or they can't do that. And of course they can't do that. And not only can't they not do that, they don't want to do that. But the European leaders are saying, oh, that's the big threat. They're going to do that, you know.
It's like they're incompetent and weak, and they're simultaneously, God-man Putin. It's just going to take over the world.
Oh, I know. But again, and they need the U.S. to defend them, which is where the U.S. wants to be. You know, we want to be in that overlord position. And I think Trump actually does have. I mean, I don't know much about what goes on in his mind, but I think he, like a lot of Americans in the 80s and 90s, 2000s, when you go to Europe, and I traveled there in the 90s,
mm-hmm.
and I was stationed in Italy and Spain, but
were you?
There is a little bit of a sense that the most brilliant cities, the newest cities, are not being built in Europe. This is a place you go for antiquity. It's a place you go for European history and great castles that are very cold and not heated, and you walk through. I mean, it is kind of an artifact. Europe is an artifact, and if you want to go where the new, beautiful, shining cities are, you're going to the global south. You're going to China, and in some cases, to a lesser extent, you can find them in Russia, but you don't find them sprouting up in Europe. And there's reasons for that. I mean, it's an old society. There are cycles to things, but also their business and regulatory and demographic environment is not something that can support that, right? It doesn't. They don't have the human energy, the vision to do it. They don't need to do it. And they also don't have the cash to do it. And nobody else is going to put their cash in Europe because they see it much as I think Donald Trump sees it, as a has-been. So he wants to leverage it. Okay, we'll let these people buy their gas from us at twice the price. And we'll tariff them also so they pay, for the privilege of doing business with us. That's I think is his approach.
And buy our weapons. Yeah.
Yeah, and they buy our weapons. But what weapons? I mean, if I was going to buy weapons, I'm seriously going to buy them from Russia if they would sell it. Because or China or India, you get cheap weapons that do wonderful things. I mean, if you're into weapons, the world will make its decision. And Trump is not. He doesn't have anybody around him that can explain those kinds of things to him. Because the U.S. can be a great place if we would recognize the world around us and what it offers and what it is, and it's not a threat to us. Now, if we keep this up and we set off nuclear weapons by accident, which could happen. It's happened before. We've had so many near misses, so many things. And if we do that, we will be the pariah to the world that Israel is today. But it'll be America. And that would be such a great loss, because one of the things that has been sustained from the very beginning, for all of our faults, people have liked Americans. They have said, we like you guys, and we like how you did business. You were a country of immigrants. You are a country of innovation. That's how we were seen. We're going to lose that. We're going to lose all of that. And people are going to have contempt if we don't figure out our real place in the world, which Trump is not figuring that out.
Karen, you are fantastic. A great breakdown. I agree with you, by the way. If I am going to get a croque monsieur and a cappuccino and watch the Eiffel Tower, that's going to be Europe, right? If you want to see the big buildings and the high-speed rail, you're going to China.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I agree with you in the way that I think Donald Trump sees Europe and the way that NATO effectively has functioned in this world. No, I agree.
Yeah.
Karen Kwiatkowski, in fact, Lieutenant Colonel Kwiatkowski. I'm going to give you a doctor thing because you got that degree.
Okay.
I'm always impressed when people get that final degree. I didn't know that you had went for your doctorate. It is good to know.
They're hard. Yeah, it takes a lot of work, and I don't know if there's a lot of reward in it, but it is the effort that goes into it. Yeah, I'll take a check mark for that, because it is hard. And anybody that has one, even Jill Biden, it's hard work. You got to do it.
Yeah,
and you have
I
to
think
really
people should.
It doesn't really, it's not rewarding. I mean, it's rewarding on a personal level, but it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean, oh, you're going to achieve great things, but you did something that was hard. So
you worked hard for it. I put it this way. When I hit my rating 2000 in chess, I was proud of that rating.
There you go.
And when people hit, I ranked 2032 in the United States Chess Federation.
Oh my God.
It took me a while to hit the 2000 because I had stopped playing for a while. And so it's like, I want to hit 2000 before I die. I want to hit 2000 before I die. 2200 is a master level, in which case people can be called master.
Oh.
Anything that people work for and they're able to get, they should get their accolades for it. So you deserve to be called doctor. I mean, granted, it's a lot, doctor, lieutenant, colonel, but screw it. You earned it. You earned it. Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski, thank you for this. And just for the bio, Lieutenant Colonel Kwiatkowski, she's a retired U.S. Air Force officer whose assignments included duties at the Pentagon desk officer and various roles for the National Security Agency. And I'm going to read the last part. I'm going to shorten this for the next time that you come on, just so it's more concise. But I do want to get your books in. It says, while she was in the Air Force, she wrote 2 books, African Crisis Response Initiative, Past, Present, and Future, and Expeditionary Air Operations in Africa, Challenges and Solutions. She contributed to Ron Paul's A Life of Ideas and Why Liberty, Personal Journeys Towards Peace and Freedom. She's featured in several documentaries, including Why We Fight. She has written for LouRockwell.com since 2003, and her work has appeared in Salon, the American Conservative. She has an MA in government from Harvard, an MS from Science Management from University of Alaska, and a PhD in world politics from Catholic University of America. Karen, thank you for this. Always appreciate you joining me. You be safe,
Absolutely.
Okay?
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye. She is great. Karen is